Men, let me tell you something that might sting at first. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to never text her again. I know it feels counterintuitive. I know it feels risky. But trust me, this single decision can change the way she sees you. And more importantly, the way you see yourself. Let's break this down. One of the biggest mistakes men make in relationships, or even during the early stages of getting to know a woman, is the tendency to chase. The idea of chasing comes from a place of desperation and neediness. It happens when a man believes he must pursue endlessly, text constantly, and always be the one making an effort just to keep her attention. On the surface, this might feel like showing interest, but in reality, it communicates something far more damaging. It sends the silent signal that you are placing her on a pedestal, that her presence in your life is more valuable than your own self respect, and that you are willing to sacrifice your dignity to keep her engaged. This is where attraction begins to fade because no woman is drawn to a man who acts like her approval is the ultimate prize. The psychology behind attraction is rooted in balance. A man who knows his worth does not overextend himself. He doesn't need to prove himself through constant communication or exaggerated efforts. Women naturally gravitate towards men who display confidence, independence, and self control. But when you chase, you abandon all of those traits. You shift the dynamic into one where she feels like the prize being hunted, while you appear as the pursuer desperate to catch up. Over time, this imbalance makes her feel less respect for you. Instead of seeing you as a strong, centered man with options, she starts viewing you as someone who cannot hold his own value unless she validates him. Every text you send to fill a silence, every effort you make to win back her attention chips away at the natural tension that builds attraction. Human nature values what is scarce. When something or someone is too available, it loses its mystery and its power. Think about how people desire things that are rare, how they admire individuals who are selective with their time. When you chase, you become the opposite of that. You broadcast that your time and energy are up for grabs, and you are willing to give it away freely just to stay in her orbit. This not only removes the intrigue, but also paints you as someone with no boundaries. What many men don't realize is that women test through behavior. If she starts pulling back, delaying responses, or showing less effort, she is indirectly observing how you will react. A man with strong self worth will notice the withdrawal and mirror it, maintaining his composure and standards. But a man who chases will panic. He will double text, call excessively, or attempt to fix the situation by giving even more attention. This overinvestment communicates exactly what she was testing for, that you are dependent on her presence to feel secure. Once that dependency is confirmed, attraction starts to die. Chasing also undermines your masculine frame. Masculinity in relationships is not about domination, it is about stability, direction, and strength. A man who chases loses all of these qualities because he is operating from emotion rather than principle. Instead of standing firm in his own world, he becomes reactive to hers. He is no longer leading the dynamic, he is following. And no woman truly desires a man who follows her emotional swings instead of holding his own ground. The moment you give up that strength, you stop being the kind of man she looks up to and starts to see you as someone she can control. Even in long term relationships, the principle holds. When a man begins to over pursue, constantly trying to please, constantly trying to win back affection, he loses the polarity that made him attractive in the first place. Relationships thrive on respect and mutual investment, but chasing destroys both. It creates a one sided energy where she is being catered to, while you are endlessly working to keep her satisfied. This imbalance is exhausting for you and uninspiring for her. Chasing is not love. Chasing is fear disguised as effort. It is the fear of losing her, the fear of not being enough, the fear of being alone. But fears are never attractive. What is attractive is certainty, calmness, and presence. A man who refuses to chase communicates that he is not afraid of loss because he knows his worth does not depend on one woman's attention. That energy is magnetic and it draws women naturally without force or constant pursuit. Silence is one of the most underrated yet powerful tools when it comes to human relationships. In a world where people are accustomed to instant replies, constant notifications, and endless access to one another, silence disrupts the pattern. It interrupts the expectation. When you stop reaching out, when you stop flooding her with words and attention, you create an empty space. And in that empty space, curiosity begins to grow. She starts to notice your absence, and instead of you constantly reminding her of your presence, she is left to wonder what you are doing, where your mind is, and why you are no longer chasing. That mystery can trigger more interest than 100 messages ever could. Curiosity is born from contrast. When someone is used to receiving consistent attention and suddenly that attention is taken away, the brain begins to search for answers. Human psychology is wired to notice what's missing, just like when a song skips a beat or a sentence trails off unfinished, the mind naturally wants to fill in the gap. Your silence becomes that missing piece, and she will try to figure out why the pattern has changed. Did you lose interest? Have you found someone else? Are you focusing on yourself? These questions occupy her mind, and the beauty of it is that you don't need to do anything but remain silent. Silence also flips the dynamic of control. When you are always available, always texting, always present, she feels secure in the knowledge that you're not going anywhere. That security can quickly turn into complacency, but when silence enters the equation, she no longer feels that certainty. Doubt creeps in. The absence of your words makes her realize how much she had grown accustomed to them. She may have taken your presence for granted, but now, without it, she starts to recognize its value. Silence forces her to confront the fact that your attention is not guaranteed, and that realization can be far more powerful than any declaration of affection. Another effect of silence is that it restores balance. In many relationships or interactions, one person often gives more energy while the other simply receives. When you decide to step back and stop over investing, you are reclaiming your share of the dynamic. Silence communicates self respect. It says, I am not going to keep pouring into something that is not reciprocated. And paradoxically, the moment you stop pouring, the other person often begins to step forward. That is the natural pull of curiosity. When you are no longer flooding her with attention, she feels the gap and instinctively wants to close it. Silence also adds an element of mystery, which is one of the strongest drivers of attraction. Think about how compelling a story becomes when a chapter ends on a cliffhanger. The mind keeps coming back to it, replaying possibilities, imagining scenarios. Your silence functions in the same way. Instead of giving her all the answers, all the reassurance, all the explanations, you leave things unfinished. That unfinished energy keeps you in her thoughts far longer than any words could. She will analyze your last interaction, replay your conversations, and wonder why you are not reaching out. This mental engagement is powerful because the more she thinks about you, the more emotionally invested she becomes. It's important to understand that silence is not about manipulation, but about alignment. It is about stepping back when your presence is not being valued and allowing curiosity to work naturally. You are not forcing her to miss you. You are simply giving her the space to realize whether she does. And in that space, her true feelings come to the surface. If she cares, she will wonder and eventually act. If she doesn't, then your silence reveals that truth faster than words ever could. Silence also protects your dignity. Instead of begging for responses or trying to keep her attention with constant communication, you allow your absence to speak on your behalf. It shows that you are confident enough to hold back, that you don't need to prove your worth through endless validation. Confidence is often expressed not in what you say, but in what you choose not to say. By staying quiet, you send a powerful unspoken message. I do not chase. I allow what is meant for me to come toward me. That kind of quiet strength is unforgettable, and it lingers in her mind far more than desperate pursuit ever could. One of the most important lessons in relationships is learning to respect your own value. Too often, men give away their attention, time, and energy without truly considering what those things are worth. They place someone else on a pedestal, believing that her presence validates their existence, while forgetting that their own presence is just as significant, if not more. Respecting your value means understanding that you bring qualities, stability, and energy into any connection, and those should not be wasted on someone who doesn't recognize them. When a man fails to respect his own value, he usually begins to overcompensate. He invests more than the other person, he bends his boundaries, and he accepts treatment that does not align with his worth. This creates a dangerous dynamic. The more you devalue yourself, the more others will follow suit. People mirror the way you treat yourself. If you carry yourself like someone who doesn't need to be respected, then respect will not be given. On the other hand, if you establish that your time, energy, and peace are not cheap commodities, people are forced to treat you with the dignity you've already claimed for yourself. Respecting your values starts with recognizing that not everyone deserves unlimited access to you. Your energy is finite, and when you give it away recklessly, you drain yourself while empowering others to take you for granted. Think about how scarcity drives desire. The things we value most are usually the things that are not easily accessible. If you are constantly available, constantly chasing, constantly giving, without boundaries, you strip yourself of that rarity. By holding back and choosing carefully where you invest, you not only protect yourself, but also command more respect from others. It's also about knowing that your worth does not come from external validation. Many men mistakenly tie their sense of value to a woman's attention. If she texts back, they feel important. If she pulls away, they feel worthless. This emotional dependency is one of the fastest ways to lose self-respect. Your value must be internal. It must come from knowing who you are, what you bring to the table, and what standards you refuse to compromise on. That internal grounding is what keeps you strong regardless of how someone else behaves. Respecting your value means not negotiating with your self-respect for the sake of temporary affection. Too often, men tolerate disrespect, inconsistency, or lack of effort because they fear losing the woman. They believe that if they walk away, they'll lose their only chance at love. But the truth is, the moment you accept less than you deserve, you communicate to yourself and to her that your standards are flexible. And once someone realizes your boundaries can be bent, they will continue to push them further. Respecting your value means setting those boundaries firmly and never trading them for comfort. This principle also extends to how you communicate. If you are constantly explaining your worth, trying to prove yourself, or begging to be seen, you are disrespecting your own value. A man who respects himself does not need to prove anything through words. His actions, his composure, and his standards do the talking. Silence in the face of disrespect, walking away from what doesn't serve you, and refusing to chase after what's not aligned. These behaviors speak louder than any words ever could. When you start respecting your value, people respond differently. The same woman who might have overlooked you before begins to see you through a different lens. Your confidence becomes attractive, your independence becomes magnetic, and your self respect becomes undeniable. Even if she doesn't return, you win, because you have preserved something far greater than her attention. Your dignity. And once a man learns to protect that, he can never truly lose. In every relationship or interaction, there is a balance of power. This balance determines who is leading, who is following, and who sets the tone for how things unfold. When a man begins to over-pursue, over-text, and over-invest, he unknowingly hands over his power. The dynamic shifts into her favor because she now feels certain of his availability and his dependence on her response. But when you choose to step back, to stop chasing, and to control your own actions rather than reacting to hers, you begin the process of reversing that power dynamic. Suddenly, the balance starts to shift, and she is no longer the one who dictates the pace. You are. Power in relationships is not about control in a harsh or manipulative sense. It is about influence and direction. When you hold your frame and refrain from chasing, you show that you are not moved by temporary silence or emotional games. You communicate that you operate on your own terms, not according to her moods or her level of attention. This naturally flips the dynamic because she can no longer predict your behavior. Instead of you anxiously waiting for her to validate you, she begins to wonder about your silence, your distance, and your composure. That curiosity puts her in the position of seeking answers, while you remain in control of yourself. Reversing the power dynamic is not about punishing her or withholding affection. It is about regaining balance and showing that your value is not tied to her reactions. For too long, many men allow women to take the lead simply because they are terrified of losing her. This fear drives them to over-communicate, to over-explain, and to overgive, all in hopes of keeping her interested. But in reality, this only makes her lose respect. When you remove that fear and allow silence to exist, you take back your strength. Now she must adjust her actions based on you, not the other way around. Another important aspect of reversing the power dynamic is unpredictability. When you are constantly available and constantly chasing, your behavior becomes predictable. She knows you will text, she knows you will call, and she knows you will always be there regardless of how she treats you. Predictability kills intrigue. By stepping back, you break that pattern. She no longer knows what to expect from you, and that uncertainty makes her think more about you. In that shift, she moves from a position of comfort to a position of questioning, and questioning always leads to pursuit. Respect plays a huge role here as well. A woman cannot truly respect a man who is beneath her in the dynamic, constantly seeking approval and reacting to her every move. But when you reverse the roles and establish that you will not beg for her attention, respect naturally grows. She sees you as someone who values himself, someone who doesn't give away his power cheaply. This respect is often the foundation upon which attraction is rebuilt. It is not always about affection, it is about how much she looks up to you as a man who holds his own. The power dynamic also shifts internally. When you stop chasing and start holding back, you begin to feel differently about yourself. You no longer view her as the prize and yourself as the pursuer. You realize that you are the one who decides who gets access to your energy and attention. This mindset change is transformative. You start moving with calmness, patience, and certainty. You no longer act out of fear of losing her because you know that nothing valuable can be lost by someone who respects his own worth. Ultimately, reversing the power dynamic is about reclaiming leadership in your own life. It is about refusing to hand over control of your emotions to someone else's behavior. It is about standing firm, being grounded, and allowing her to see that your world does not revolve around her responses. That shift creates a new level of attraction because true power lies in a man who is willing to walk away rather than compromise his self respect. One of the hardest but most rewarding skills a man can develop is the ability to detach emotionally from situations where his feelings cloud his judgment. When emotions run high, clarity is often the first thing to disappear. You start to see what you want to see instead of what is actually happening. You ignore red flags, you rationalize poor behavior, and you convince yourself that things will get better if you just keep trying. Emotional detachment, however, removes that fog. It allows you to step back and see people and situations for what they truly are, not what you hope they will be. Detachment doesn't mean shutting off your emotions completely or becoming cold. It means refusing to let your emotions dictate your decisions. When you are deeply attached, you operate from fear, fear of losing her, fear of being alone, fear of rejection. That fear pushes you into behaviors that go against your self respect. You chase, you overtext, you lower your boundaries, and you accept treatment that you would never tolerate if you weren't emotionally invested. By practicing detachment, you stop letting fear drive your actions and instead allow logic and self worth to guide you. When you detach, you start noticing patterns that were once hidden by your emotional investment. You begin to see if her actions match her words. You notice if her interest is genuine or if she only reaches out when she needs something. You become aware of how much effort she truly puts in compared to what you give. These are things you cannot see clearly when you are blinded by attachment because your emotions will always create excuses for her behavior. Detachment removes those excuses, and suddenly the truth becomes impossible to ignore. Another benefit of emotional detachment is peace of mind. When you are attached, every small delay in response feels like rejection. Every disagreement feels like a threat to the relationship, and every silence feels unbearable. You ride an emotional roller coaster controlled by her actions. But when you detach, you reclaim control of your inner state. You no longer overanalyze every message or lose sleep over her inconsistencies. You recognize that her behavior reflects who she is, not who you are. This mental shift frees you from the constant cycle of anxiety and allows you to focus on what truly matters: your own growth, stability, and well being. Detachment also increases your value in her eyes. A man who is overly attached comes across as desperate, and desperation is never attractive. But a man who can care without clinging, who can love without losing himself, demonstrates strength. She begins to feel that she must earn your presence instead of assuming it is guaranteed. That shift naturally reignites respect and attraction because women are drawn to men who are grounded, composed, and not swayed by emotional turbulence. More importantly, detachment gives you the freedom to walk away when necessary. Too many men stay in toxic situations simply because they are emotionally attached and afraid of letting go. They sacrifice their peace just to hold on to someone who no longer respects or values them. Detachment breaks this cycle. It gives you the ability to say, I see what this is, and I refuse to accept it, without being paralyzed by fear of loss. That ability is what separates men who remain stuck from those who grow stronger after every experience. Practicing detachment is not easy. It requires discipline, self awareness, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. But once mastered, it transforms the way you approach relationships. Instead of being consumed by emotions, you observe them. Instead of reacting impulsively, you respond intentionally. Instead of losing yourself in someone else, you remain rooted in who you are. This clarity changes everything. It allows you to see reality, protect your value, and make decisions that align with your highest standards. In relationships, words can be deceiving, but actions rarely are. Many men fall into the trap of believing everything a woman says, even when her behavior doesn't match. She may tell you she's interested. She may claim she cares, but if her actions consistently fail to reflect those words, then the truth is already clear. When someone genuinely values you, they will show it. Care cannot be faked for long. It always reveals itself in effort, consistency, and presence. A woman who truly cares will make time, not excuses. It doesn't matter how busy she is or what challenges she faces, she will find a way to check in, to stay connected, and to reassure you of her interest. Human beings naturally prioritize what matters to them. If you notice that you are always the one reaching out, always the one initiating, always the one making plans while she provides nothing in return, then that imbalance is your answer. Her lack of action is not confusion, and it is not mixed signals. It is clarity. The mistake men often make is assuming that if they just try harder, she will eventually start caring. They believe that more texts, more calls, more attention will spark something inside her. But care is not something you can force. If she values you, she will not need convincing. Her actions will already align with her words. And if she doesn't, then no amount of chasing will create feelings that were never there to begin with. This is why understanding this principle is so important. It saves you from wasting time and energy on someone unwilling to meet you halfway. Caring is demonstrated in the small details. It shows when she remembers things you mentioned, when she checks on you without being prompted, when she invests in your happiness without expecting anything in return. These little actions reveal that she is not just passively keeping you around, but is actively choosing to be involved in your life. Contrast this with someone who disappears for days, ignores your efforts, or only shows up when it's convenient for her. That inconsistency is not love or care, it is convenience. When a woman cares, she contributes to the relationship. She doesn't just receive your energy, she reciprocates it. She listens, supports, and encourages. She puts effort into resolving conflicts instead of avoiding them. She shows respect for your time and boundaries. These behaviors demonstrate genuine interest and commitment, and they require no guessing. If you find yourself constantly questioning how she feels, it usually means she isn't showing enough to make you feel secure in the first place. This principle also highlights the importance of self respect. When you keep giving without receiving, you communicate that her lack of effort is acceptable. Over time, this conditions her to invest even less because she knows you will always be there regardless. Respecting your own value means refusing to accept one sided investment. It means acknowledging that someone who truly cares won't leave you doubting. Her actions will bring clarity, not confusion. A woman who values you will not let silence linger indefinitely. She will not risk losing you by neglecting your presence. If she notices distance, she will bridge the gap. If she senses something is wrong, she will try to fix it. Real care doesn't hide behind pride, ego, or excuses. It reveals itself in effort. And if that effort is absent, then you already have your answer. At the core, this truth is liberating. You no longer need to analyze every word, decode every signal, or wait endlessly for confirmation. Instead, you observe her actions. If she truly cares, you will see it. If she doesn't, you will see that too. And in either case, the clarity frees you to move forward with strength and dignity, knowing that real care is never invisible. At the end of the day, everything comes down to one simple truth. A man who values himself does not beg, chase, or compromise his dignity for temporary attention. Chasing kills attraction, silence creates curiosity, respecting your value keeps your standards intact, reversing the power dynamic restores balance. Emotional detachment brings clarity, and remembering that if she truly cares, she will show it. All of these principles tie back to one core idea: you are the prize when you act like it. Your strength lies not in how much you give away, but in how much you are willing to withhold until it is genuinely reciprocated. When you stop texting, stop chasing, and stop handing away your power, you shift from desperation to self respect. That is the moment she sees you differently. And more importantly, that is the moment you begin to see yourself differently. This journey is not about punishing her or playing games. It is about protecting your value. It is about creating space for the right woman to step up while allowing the wrong one to fade away. When you understand these truths and apply them with discipline, you not only gain respect from women, but you also gain respect from yourself. And that respect is the foundation of every strong, lasting, and meaningful connection you will ever build.